Welcome to the podcast for Renaissance Fellowship, where we are creatively and actively revealing Jesus' love to our generation. Here we find the script in Scripture and the text in context. Follow us at reddenfellowship.com or join us live Sunday nights at 6 p.m. in Sunrise, Florida, or online via Periscope. Here's our pastor, Jared Kring.
I have a confession to make. When I was a child, I refused to take baths. I'm not proud of this. I share this in vulnerability with you, but it was a problem that I had, and just for the record, I didn't have a problem taking showers, so I did actually wash myself. I wasn't like Pigpen from the Peanuts, walking around with this giant dust cloud around myself. I would, wash myself, but I would not take showers. There was a period of time I would not take baths. I would not swim in the swimming pool, and if I had lived close to an ocean, there was no way in the world I would have gotten into the ocean. And there was one absolute, inalienable, perfect, undeniable reason for all of this, and it is the movie Jaws. Has everyone seen the movie Jaws? Look at that. I mean, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. So somehow along the line, I made the mistake of watching parts of the movie, not even the whole movie. Just when I was a little, I saw parts and scenes of this movie, and it terrified me so completely that I would not take a bath. And you're like, a bath? What does that have to do with sharks? I mean, of course, the shark would come up through the pipes into the bathtub through the drain. Duh, of course. And you wouldn't swim in a swimming pool because the shark would come up through the drain pipe and be in the pool, and you would get eaten by the shark. And I don't know how a shark that small would eat, but it doesn't matter. I would refuse to swim in the deep end of the pool. I would not take baths. I wouldn't get in lakes, nowhere. For about a year, I refused to do any of these things. And it was perfectly rational to me in my own mind to do this. It was perfect because I could see in my mind the shark swimming up through the drain and coming in. I was visually 100% true. Sharks were terrifying to me. Of course, later in life, I've gotten actually a great affinity for sharks. I love them. I've scuba dived with sharks purposely on many occasions. Chuck and we went scuba diving. I saw a nurse shark, and his son yanked on its tail, and it was awesome. I love them. But when I was little, they terrified me. It was a completely irrational fear. Like a bathtub. Come on, this is absolutely ridiculous. It wasn't based on any fact or any logic. It wasn't based on any personal experience. But that didn't matter because in my mind, these were legitimate, plausible things that could actually happen, and they kept me frozen. I was completely frozen. And see, that's the problem with fear. Fear makes irrational things seem rational. Fear makes things that are completely irrational seem completely plausible in your mind because you can see it. It's possible a shark could come up through the thing and I'd be in the bathtub and it'd eat my toes and then it'd eat my body and I'd be dead. Completely irrational. But in my mind, it was rational. Now, I was thinking about Jaws and bathtubs and sharks this week as I was preparing for this message because we just started a series called F Words. And what we're talking about is we're talking about these words, these things that are really particularly difficult for human beings to deal with. And they all happen to start with the word F. Last week we looked at faith. This week we're looking at fear. Next week we're going to talk about forgiveness. And the final week, we're going to talk about a big one, failure. And these words that are really complicated and difficult ideas for us to work with and deal with, we're talking about these things. And this week, we're looking at fear. But last week, we started with faith. And we were looking at John, the 6th chapter, and we looked at how Jesus dealt with his disciples when they didn't have faith for something. Like, what do you do if you don't believe? Like, if you don't believe that something is possible, if you don't have faith for something, and what if you're sick and you don't believe that God can heal you? what do you do then? Do you just whip yourself and browbeat yourself until you have faith? I mean, do you just look in the mirror and try to, I have faith. No, I don't. No, I don't. I have faith. No, I don't. I mean, what do you do? What do you do when you don't have enough faith for something? And what we learned last week, we saw how Jesus worked with people and grew their faith in the process of what they were doing, how he took what they had and he worked with it and he made extraordinary things happen. Because in our culture, if you don't believe, if you're not on board, if you don't have faith, the only thing we know to do is yell at you. How dare you not have faith? How dare you? What? Well, you're just negative, and I got to cut the negative people out of my life. You're just get out of here. You're a hater. Get the haters out. Haters going to hate. Go away. That's what we do with people who don't believe. But that's not what Jesus did. Thank God. Otherwise, he'd have had nobody around him. Right? I mean, at some point, we're all going to face a situation or a problem that we don't have faith for. And last week, we looked and we saw how Jesus worked with people even when they didn't have faith. But this week's F word is completely different. This week, we're talking about fear. And there are people that would tell you, and I would happen to agree with them, that your life, your ability to be content and to be successful in life is completely correlated to your ability to manage and deal with your fear. Your ability to actually deal with, conquer, and work through your fear in life is directly correlated to your ability to succeed and your ability to be happy. Because the things that hold you back, that keep you from succeeding, the things that keep you from being content and happy in life are almost always directly correlated to fear in some way, shape, or form. Now, I found out something really interesting this week, and this is going to blow your mind. It blew my mind. Did you know that we are born with only two fears? Babies, when they come out of the womb, have two fears. Fear of falling and a fear of loud noises. That's it. Now, wrap your mind around this. Fear of falling, fear of loud noises. That means that every other fear that we have is learned. And just think about that for a minute. That's all you got. You come out as a blank piece of paper with a fear of falling and a fear of loud noises. A baby, you unwrap them and they go, because they think they're falling. Have you ever seen it, right? Have you ever seen a little baby do that? And then they clap their hands by their ears, they go, and they cry because they're afraid of loud noises and they're afraid of falling. But everything else is learned. Fear is learned. That might be all you need to know tonight, because I tell you, that blew my mind, because I was thinking, I had to have come out with a fear of spiders, right? I mean, that's got to be natural, right? I mean, that's got to be a natural fear. But no, what happened at some point in my life, I saw my mom look at a spider and go, ah. So I go, ah. I learned to be afraid of everything. I learned my fear. God never intended for us to be afraid. Actually, in 1 Timothy, in 2 Timothy, the first chapter, verse 7, it says, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." Power, love, and a sound mind. Doesn't that sound good? I'll take that. You keep the fear. I'll take the power, the love, and the sound mind, right? It's incredible that every fear that we have is learned. God didn't intend for his children to live in a spirit of fear, afraid of this world that we live in, afraid to live. God's intention for all of us is to not be afraid. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting, though, right? Because we kind of lump all fears in together. But that's not really the case. So I was like, there's got to be a categorization. So I broke it down into two categories, okay? There are fears that keep us alive, okay? But then there are fears that keep us from living. Okay, so let's give me an example. This is audience participation time. Give me an example of a fear that would keep you alive. Yes, fear of sharks is a plausible fear. I 100% that will keep you alive. A healthy fear of sharks is wise. Okay, somebody else. Cliffs. Okay, what was that? Fire, absolutely. When you're little, you touch something, you touch fire, you touch a burner, you burn your hand, you create a fear, and that fear will keep you alive. Maddie. A fear of dying, just in general. That's good. I love Woody Allen. Woody Allen says, I'm not afraid of death, I just don't want to be there when it happens. Wonderful. Anybody else? A fear that'll keep you alive. Fear of a hurricane. 100%. You know what? We didn't get much of Matthew, but I don't blame us for being prepared, because there were people. We were blessed this week, right? There were people who got it worse, but a healthy fear of that, 100% will keep you alive. Okay, so those are some healthy fears that will keep you alive, right? I don't know about you, but a fear of my dad, that was a fear that kept me alive, okay? 100%. That's why the Bible says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good, healthy fear and respect for authority, for something bigger than you, is a good idea, right? Okay, now what about this? What about fears that keep you from living? Okay, oh, great. Because when you're afraid of heights, there's so many things you can't do. You can't go out on balconies. You can't go on roller coasters. You can't go on trips and mountain climbing. So many things you can't do. Yeah. Hypothetical allergies. Okay. I actually had that on my list. I had a fear of germs. Have you ever met someone that's a hypochondriac? And they're just constantly afraid of what they're going to catch. And so it keeps them from doing so many different things. What, anybody else? Yeah. Ooh, fear of people, relationships. Absolutely. Anybody ever known someone, don't point, who has a difficulty with that? How about a fear of risk? Right? If you're afraid to take a chance, how many opportunities do you miss out on in life, right? So fears that keep us alive, but then there are fears that keep us from living. And what I want to talk about tonight, what I want us to spend the rest of our time talking about tonight, is not the fears that keep us alive. I don't want to talk about arachnophobia or, being afraid of snakes. No. I want to talk about what Paul was talking about, that spirit of fear. That thing that freezes us, because fear is poison. You understand? I want you to get this tonight, that fear is poison to the human heart. It freezes us. It causes us not to be able to move. It causes us not to be able to launch out into new things. It causes us not to be able to launch out in love and reach out to someone because we're afraid that we're going to get hurt. We're afraid that what happened last time is going to happen again. We're afraid that what happened to our neighbor is going to happen to us. We become afraid, and we're like a deer in the headlights. And what happens to the deer in the headlights? It gets hit by the truck. That's right. Exactly right. So we get frozen in fear, and we end up getting hit and maimed and crushed by the things in life because we're afraid. So this is what we want to spend our time talking about tonight. And the first thing I want us to look at is 1 John, the 4th chapter, verse 18. This is one of my favorite scriptures in the entire Bible. John, who was one of Jesus' disciples, and this is later in his life, he's actually exiled on an island called Patmos. And he's writing these letters to the church. And he's writing these letters to his friends and his congregants. And he writes this amazing letter, 1 John. And right here in the 4th chapter, he says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love. Now, if I were to ask 100 people, like let's say we go to the mall tonight, we quizzed 100 people, we say, what's the opposite of fear? Most people would say, probably what? Courage, right? Courage is probably, but if you ask people, what's the opposite of love? They would probably say, hate, right? But I think what John is showing us here, what he's revealing to us, is this really deep idea that the opposite of fear is not courage. The opposite of fear is love. Love and fear are like oil and water. They cannot exist in the same space. Any part of your being that contains fear, love cannot be in that place. And any part of your being that contains love, fear cannot live in that space. Love and fear cannot exist in the same space. They cancel each other out. They're like polar opposites of each other. And our pursuit, our goal, our hope as Christians and followers of Jesus Christ is that we can learn how to begin to displace the spirit of fear and this culture and this world that breeds fear in us, and we begin to replace that with love. Because don't you, like if you watch TV for more than 5 minutes, it's all about fear. Like everything is about fear. Advertising by its very nature is about fear. Buy this or you're not going to be cool. Do this or no one's going to accept you. Watch this, vote for this, do this. If you don't want to die, vote for this person. I mean, it's all fear. Fear of not being accepted, fear of not being safe, fear of being attacked, fear of each other, fear of people coming in and taking what you've got. Fear, fear, fear. Everything is fear. But if we're going to have that sound mind, that power that Paul mentioned in that scripture, we have got to replace our fear with love. And this battle between love and fear is the battle that every single human being is fighting every single day of their life. From the moment you're born, it's love or fear. Are you going to love or are you going to be afraid? And what I want to do tonight is I want to take these last few minutes and I want to see how Jesus dealt with his disciples, people like us, when they were afraid. Because did you know if you look at somebody and say, don't be afraid, doesn't really help, right? You know, yelling at someone for being afraid doesn't really stop them from being afraid, right? It's not a very effective way of doing things. So how did Jesus deal with his disciples when they were... Okay, so last week we were talking about the feeding of the 5,000, and we were talking about faith, and this week we're going to pick up right where we left off, okay? But instead of John, the 6th chapter, we're going to be in Mark, the 6th chapter, okay? Same story. We actually used a little detail from Mark, the 6th chapter last week, the whole 50s and 100s thing. So right now we're going to pick up right where we left off. And basically what's just happened is the disciples have just fed 5,000 men, not including women and children. So somewhere between probably 10 to 15,000 people, including women and children, they have fed with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Now, the disciples were not really on board for this miracle. They really didn't have faith for it. And Jesus took this situation and used what they had and broke it down to where they could begin to walk towards it. He took a 5,000 problem and he made it 50. So instead of having to feed 5,000 people, they just had one group of 50 that they had to walk towards. And they fed that 50, then another 50, then they fed 100. And before you know it, they're feeling pretty good about this. So they get done, everybody's stuffed. You know, they're just in that, that post-Thanksgiving, you know, after Thanksgiving, oh, God, yes. Bye-bye belt. That's the moment where everybody is right now. They ate till they were filled. They gather up the fragments, and everybody's just feeling great. Hey, man, hey, thank you. I love the way you threw that fish, man. That was awesome. Hey, thank you. Man, thanks for that extra piece of bread. No problem. Like afterglow, right? And this is where our story picks up right here in Mark, the 6th chapter, verse 45. It says, immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into a boat and go ahead of him to the other side to Bethsaida while he himself was sending the crowd away. Stop. Immediately, he made the disciples get in a boat. Now, the reason that it's important that he made them do it, because they didn't want to go. They got fish, they got bread, they got people. Everybody thinks they're cool, they're appreciative. This is like the afterglow. This is the backstage after party after the show. You know, everybody's feeling good about themselves, right? And Jesus is like, no. Get in the boat, get in the boat, get in the boat, go. And they're like, what? I don't want to go in a boat. I want to stay with the fish and the bread. No. Get in the boat, go to the other side. Can you imagine them getting in the boat? You know, like they don't. I'm gonna get a boat. I want a boat. I want fish and bread and people and make me get in this boat and go to the other side. So they're already not happy. Okay, so let's get where we are. The disciples are unhappy about this trip to the other side. So let's read on verse 46. And after bidding them farewell, see you later, he left for the mountain to pray. Jesus left and went up in the mountain to pray. Now, verse 47, when it was evening, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and Jesus was alone on the land. Spoiler alert, that's important. He was alone on the land. Okay, if you got a Bible, underline it. He was alone on the land. Verse 48, seeing them straining at the oars. Stop right there. I always try to point stuff like this out whenever we come to it because I never think that we can emphasize this enough. That Jesus comes out of his prayer time in the mountains, and he doesn't come out feeling all self-righteous and holier than thou and completely oblivious to the world around him in such a spiritual state of, oh. Jesus comes out aware, and the first things that he sees is he looks out into the water and he sees his disciples struggling. Never forget that Jesus sees your struggle. It's so easy to get into the moment and the difficulty of the moment. And the first thing that always pops up is loneliness. That we feel like we're alone. Like no one understands, no one gets it, nobody knows what I'm going through, nobody cares. Never forget, Jesus sees the struggle. So frequently in the New Testament you'll see, and Jesus saw them, and he lifted up his eyes and he saw, and he noticed, and he felt the woman touch the hem of his garment. He always is connected to his disciples, always connected to people. He sees the struggle. Never forget that Jesus sees your struggle. And sometimes I think we can be in the midst of a difficult time in our journey, and we're going through a difficult time. It's so easy to think that we're alone, but you are not alone. Okay? Verse 48. Seeing them straining at the oars, for the wind was against them. Stop. Ain't this life? Right? I mean, this is life, like life in a nutshell. You're in a boat, you're rowing, and the wind is against you. This is what life feels like so much of the time. It feels like that the wind is against us. And it feels like we're working, right? We're doing everything we know how to do. We're using every muscle that we've got, but we just ain't making no progress, right? We're just not making any progress. And don't forget, these are fishermen. It's not like these are first-time boats. It's not like me in a boat. Like I'd probably be rowing the wrong way and going in circles, But these are fishermen. They know how to do this. They know how to row. They know how to be in boats. They've probably done this trip 100 times. And they're in the boat. They're doing exactly what they know how to do, the best way that they know how to do it. And they're not making any progress. Does that sound familiar? I'm in my life, I'm doing everything I know how to do, doing it the best way I know how to do it, and for the life of me, it feels like I'm not making any progress. This is such an important thing for us to understand, an important metaphor, because the struggle right here, these moments where we're not making progress, this is where fear plants its seeds. This is where fear gets its hooks in us. Is we think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing it the best way that we know how, and then come the questions. God, where are you? Right? What did I do wrong? Why are you cursing me? Why did you send the wind to block my progress? Am I supposed to go back? And superstition kicks in. Is this a sign? Does this mean that I'm not supposed to do this? Did I make a wrong choice? Did Jesus not mean for me to get in the boat? But he told me to get in the boat, so I think I'm supposed to be in the boat. But here I am, and I'm rowing, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be in the boat. Right? This is the struggle that all of us face at some point or another, or multiple points in our life. Why is the wind keeping me from making progress? Why? But here's the thing. What happens if they stop rowing? They go back. There are times in our life that we have to row and give everything we've got just to stay where we are. Sometimes you've got to give it everything you've got just to not lose the ground that you've gained. And you could think, man, I'm not getting anywhere. Yeah, but what happens if you stop? Then you're going backwards. And that's what happens so many times. We get discouraged because we're not making the progress that we think we should be making in life. So we give up, and guess what happens? And before we know it, we're regressing. We're going into old habits and old ideas and old relationships, and we're calling people at 2:30 in the morning that we shouldn't be calling. We're making decisions that we shouldn't be making. We're charging things on credit cards we shouldn't be charging, and all of a sudden all the progress that we've made is gone because we gave up. And suddenly, instead of maintaining our ground, we're moving backwards. Sometimes you've got to work with everything you've got just to maintain the progress that you've made. Those are not fun times, but it's necessary that you don't give up in those seasons. Sometimes you have to struggle just to stay where you are, just to not lose ground, because the minute you stop struggling and stop rowing, you start going back because the wind is against you. Now let's read on. At about the 4th watch of the night, Jesus came to them walking on the sea, and he intended to pass them. I'll stop right there. Okay, first thing, 4th watch of the night. The Jewish people, and it kind of absorbed the way that the Romans broke up the evening. They broke up the evening into 4 3-hour segments, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., first watch. 9 p.m. to 12 a.m., second watch. 12 a.m. to 3 a.m., third watch. 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., fourth watch. So this is 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Somewhere in here, Jesus comes to them walking on water. What? Walking on water. Now, this is really, really important, and I know I say that a lot, but this is really important. This is absolutely critical to our understanding of who Jesus is and our faith. Okay, here's the question. Why did Jesus walk on water? The why is incredibly important because this story, this thing of Jesus walking on water, is misused and abused so badly because it's impressive, right? I'm like, whoa, yeah, I wish I could do that, right? That'd be awesome. I mean, if I could walk on water, that'd be cool. I mean, people are obsessed with this thing of Jesus walking on water. And then in another passage of the same story, it talks about Peter coming and walking on the water to him. And then it's like, oh, wow, we can walk on water too? This thing is totally misused and abused. Why is Jesus walking on water? And I'll tell you, the answer to that question is in verse 47, the one I said, spoiler alert. Because when he was on the land, what was he? He was on the land alone. Okay? So if Jesus gets in a boat and starts rowing by himself, what's going to happen? He ain't going nowhere. Because there's a whole boat full of disciples rowing, and they're not making any progress, right? So if Jesus gets in a boat by himself, what's going to happen? He's never going to get to him. The reason Jesus is walking on water is so he can get to his disciples. That's it. Jesus is trying to get to his disciples. And walking on water was the way to do it. That's the way he could get to them. And this is crucial because what we have to understand is that Jesus wants to get to us in our struggle. Jesus is trying to get to us where we are in our struggle. We're struggling in a boat, so where's Jesus trying to get to? He's trying to get to us. That's what he's trying to do. And if he gets in a boat and tries to row out into the water, he's in the same predicament his disciples are in. Jesus never used his power to show off. He's not trying to impress the disciples. He's not trying to say, hey, look what I picked up. I was just up in prayer, and God told me that I could do this. Look at this. No. People, whenever they followed Jesus to try to see a miracle, he would never jump through hoops and show off and use his power and healing to try to impress people. This has nothing to do with impressing. This is practical application. I need to get from here to there. I can't do it in a boat. I don't have a surfboard. Looks like I'm walking on water. Jesus is trying to get to us in our struggle. He's trying to get to our boat. He's trying to get to be with us in whatever it is that we're going through. This is really important. we have to understand Jesus wants to be with us in our struggle. He never promised that we wouldn't have wind in our face and we wouldn't have problems and that we wouldn't have issues. The promise is that he's with us in our struggle. That's what it means, Emmanuel, God with us. He's with us in our struggle. Jesus will do whatever it takes to be with you in your struggle. Verse 49, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost. And they cried out. Something like this. Ah! Who's got the most girlish, like just high-pitched horror movie screams? Somebody give it. Lily, give it to me. That was great. That's the way the disciples sounded. 12 grown men screaming like a 12-year-old girl. Ah! It's a ghost. Because they didn't recognize him. You know why? Because fear changes your perception. Fear literally changes the way you see the world. Literally. You don't see a bathtub anymore. You see a Shark Tank, right? Fear, you don't see friends. You see enemies. You don't see opportunity. You see unnecessary risk. You don't see blessing. You see hassle. See, fear changes the way that you see the world. They didn't recognize that this was their master, their savior, their best friend coming on the water to be with them in their time of need. Instead, it's a ghost. Fear will change the way you see the world. They got caught up in their own struggle and the frustration of where they were, and they let fear take root in their heart, and fear will change everything. It'll change the way you see the world. Fear will literally change the way you see it. It will make you believe that sharks can come up plumbing pipes into bathtubs. It'll make you think that a ghost is coming to you on the water. Read on, verse 50. For they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke with them and said to them, take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. I want you to see something really interesting that's kind of blew me away this week. That it's kind of God's priority here that we need to understand that Jesus calms the disciples before he calms the storm. Jesus calms the disciples before he calms the storm. See, all too often when storms come in our life, we think that the storm is the problem. We think that the wind against us is the problem. Man, that's the issue. This wind, this storm, this is the problem. And what Jesus is showing us here is that the problem is not the storm. The problem is us. Wind will come and go. Storms will come and go. Problems will come and go. Money will come and go. People will come and go. What stays the same is our reaction to those things. Our reactions are what remain the same throughout everything. And God is more concerned about calming us before he calms and worries about calming the storm. So often we pray for God to change our circumstances. God, if you could just get rid of this obstacle in my way, if you could just get rid of this, man, then everything would be great. And what God knows is that no, the storm is not your problem. Your reaction to the storm is the problem. The storm is not your problem. Your reaction to the storm is the problem. The storm is a storm. It's wind. And you're taking this wind and the storm and you're creating an irrational scenario of fear. You've turned a storm into fear. And this is something that we as humans do. We're really good at transforming things into fear. We can turn anything into fear. I mean, I was looking at a list of psychological phobias. Literally, human beings can be afraid of anything. Like arachnophobia, and like there's ones for cockroaches. There's ones for people that are afraid of canned objects. Deathly afraid of like canned foods. And you're like, how does that happen? But it is. It's true. We can turn anything into an irrational fear. And God knows this about us. He understands that it is not the object, it's not the storm that is our problem. We keep fixating on this external thing that we think is the problem, when the problem is our reaction to the storm. Because storms are going to come and go. But what remains the same is how we react to the storm. Read on verse 51. Then he got into the boat with them. Stop right there. Never forget that Jesus' goal is to get into the boat with you. That's what he wants. It's why he walks on water. It's why he does everything. It's why he came from heaven to earth and was born as a baby in a manger. Everything that was ever done, the entire plan of salvation, the entire Bible is about Jesus getting in the boat with you. It's about him being in relationship with you in your struggle, where you are at every moment. That is the entire Bible right there, and he got in the boat with them. That's the Bible. Boom. Done. Thank you. Good night. I'll be here all week, all right? That's it. That's the whole story. If you don't get that, it's not about guilt. It's not about all these other things that people make it about. It is about Jesus getting in the boat with you where you are in your struggle and being with you in that struggle. That is what the whole thing is about. Now look, verse 51, but it goes on. And the wind stopped, and they were utterly astonished. And they had not gained, verse 52, for they had not gained any insight from the incident of the loaves, but their heart was hardened. Ouch, right? Ugh. Ouch. The thing that gets me is they were utterly astonished. Why? I mean, like literally, like 8 hours ago, they just fed like 15,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. They're traveling with a guy who makes blind men see and crippled people walk. He raises people from the dead. And suddenly he gets in a boat and wind stops and they're like, wow, like why are you astonished by this? Like why is this a big deal? And this is the last thing I want us to get tonight, is that fear makes us forget. Fear makes us forget. And that is the biggest problem. Fear will make you forget every good thing that's ever happened. It'll make you forget everybody who ever loved you. It'll make you forget every positive thing that's ever happened, because you are that deer frozen in the headlights, and all that matters is what's bearing down on you in that moment. You will forget everything. They forgot that their master could open the eyes of the blind. They forgot who they served. They forgot that they serve an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-present God. They forgot all of that, and they thought it was a ghost. And then they're surprised when this all-powerful, all-knowing, all-present God makes the wind cease. It's ridiculous, because fear had gotten in their heart and made them forget who they are and who they serve. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the struggle with the wind that's opposing us, and that fear enters our heart and we just forget. Fear is like one of those magic eraser sponges. It just goes in and just erases everything. It like goes in your brain and just wipes the whole hard drive clean. And suddenly you feel like you're alone. I'm by myself. Oh my God, nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me. God's nowhere. Because you forgot. Every person in here has had the wind in their face opposing them at some point. Amen? Everybody's had it. But the very fact that you're here and you're listening to me means that you survived it. You survived. Every person here has had a struggle, something that they thought was insurmountable, that they couldn't face. But the very fact that you're here and listening to my voice means that you survived. And fear will try to go in and erase that memory of what you've survived and what you've endured. It goes in and erases all the memories of the victories and the struggles of the past, all the answered prayers, and it irrationally makes you believe that this situation is hopeless. And if we're going to conquer the fears in our life, we must remember. Turn to your neighbor and say, don't forget to remember. Don't forget to remember. Don't forget to remember the love. Don't forget to remember that you're not alone. Don't forget to remember that you are not a fatherless child. You are not an orphan on some blue speck in a sea of blackness. You are not by yourself. You are cared for. you are loved, and you have a God that will do whatever is necessary to get in the boat with you. Fear wants you to forget. But God came so you could remember. Jesus came to help you remember. Love and faith is there to help you remember. Remember the struggles. Because if he saw you through this, and he saw you through this, then he will see you through this. And it's those chains that connect together, those links, that give us faith and conquer our fear. You know, lots of times you'll read the Old Testament and the old stories in the Old Testament, and whenever God did something really big, like parting of the Red Sea or conquering, David killing Goliath, they would build an altar, like a memorial, okay? And they would name that place for that victory. So, for instance, when Abraham was going to sacrifice his son Isaac, and God sent a ram to take his place, Abraham built an altar and a memorial there, and he named that place Jehovah Jireh, which means God provides. So that whenever Abraham, from that day forward, went by that place, oh, that's Jehovah Jireh. When his children walked by that place, oh, that place is called Jehovah Jireh. It means God provides, because my dad and my grandfather, they provided a ram, and it saved my dad's life. And his children's children, oh, that place is called Jehovah Jireh. It's a constant reminder of the things that God did, so you never forget. You never get in a moment of fear and forget what God can do. We have to do that ourselves. And I'm not just talking theoretically. Like, make a photo album in your phone of reminders of the good things that God's done, of the things that he's done. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, you go there and oh yeah, when he healed my friend of this sickness, when he provided for that bill that and it was the exact amount that I needed, and it was crazy, or when God did this for my friend. And you can remind yourself, like those little altars that you make in yourself, in your heart, to remind yourself of the good things that God has done. So when you have fear and you have the wind in your face and it's trying to creep inside you and say, yeah, you're alone, nobody cares, God abandoned you. You go, oh, no. I remember Jehovah Jireh. God provides. He did it. And you know what happens then? Perfect love casts out fear. I love that too. Because it's not like, excuse me, fear, if you're done, would you mind leaving? Because we don't really want you here right now. No, that's not casting out. What's casting out? It's like a bouncer, right? Like in the old Western movies, the guy would throw the guy out the front door into the horse manure in the street, That's what love does to fear. It takes fear and it throws it out the door, and it says, hey, you are not welcome here. You are not welcome in the heart of an individual who has the love of Christ and the faith of Christ living in them. You are not welcome here, and don't come back either. That's what love does. It casts out fear, and the way that we do that is by remembering the good things that God has done. Don't forget to remember. One more time, turn to your neighbor and say, don't forget to remember.
We hope you enjoyed our podcast. We invite you to subscribe and spread the word on your favorite social media, and follow us at REN Fellowship, or keep up with us at renfellowship.com. Tune in next time as we continue to share the gospel according to common sense.